Mental health, man, like, I mean, let's start with, us as men, and we taught that we ain't supposed to get our emotions out or be able to keep, talk stuff out. We're taught to keep everything in, or we feel like it's proper to hold stresses in and hold different things that's going on with us in. We need to talk about that stuff. We need to find friends, find loved ones, find people to let them know like what's actually going on, what we feeling. Your feelings are real, you know what I mean? It's important that we know and we're in control of those emotions and feelings, and we're able to actually talk it out with someone. So don't feel like to be a man, you gotta be tough. You gotta hold it in. It's not okay to cry. Nah, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. That's the biggest thing.
Once we are at a place where we can actually unite and co-create, we are limitless. We are the most powerful source on the planet, and we must really tie into our innate nature and our natural ability to lead. We are the kings and queens of the planet.
I want to say, save every dollar that you can as early as you can so that you can buy a house when you get out of high school. That's going to be extremely valuable for you with equity and things like that, and open up doors of opportunity to do whatever you want instead of having to answer to anybody else. Your job is not to make sure everybody else is happy or comfortable. It's to make sure that you're okay in everything that you do, and put yourself first, because then you can take care of the people that you care about the most.
Terrence Roberts.
Terrence Roberts.
Terrence Roberts.
Terrence Roberts is a well-known activist.
Received praise from the mayor, the governor.
Bad guys don't always win, guys.
Terrence sowed good seeds.
Black lives matter.
We had a mass shooting by Denver police. They blamed food trucks. These are small businesses. These are the small businesses that sustain our city. We need to continue the conversation about reimagining policing in the city of Denver, and we can do it. We will do it. It's going to happen.
A week where there was 6 or 7 murders continuously over a weekend with young people. And the older individuals were saying, we know how to stop it. You can't reach them. We know who we do. And that's how that relationship came about. However, I think the movie and perhaps the book, the movie is clearer to me because it's just an hour and a half. The book has a whole bunch of stuff in it. I can't keep up with all of the stuff in the book, but the movie seems to be focused on, in part, that you were working in concert with law enforcement to destroy Terrence's movement and to take over his movement with active gang members. And that's kind of the narrative of the movie per se. You're the godfather, and everyone listens to what you have to say, and it sets you up as working with Callow, Commander Callow, et cetera, to destroy Terrence and take over his movement. What are your thoughts to just that narrative as I see it inside of the movie?
First of all, people who know me now, I'm not going to be dictated by nobody to say who I can and can't talk to, who I can and can't befriend. Me and Mike Callow, we go back decades, many years. As a personal friend, I respect him as a commander. We had conversation as to how can we diffuse some of the tensions that's going on in the neighborhoods, whether it's Park Hill, whether it's on the east side, whether it's in Marbello. How can we work together to diffuse this? when it says that this was a conspiracy to be able to come and create a group of informants. When we start working with GRID, for example, and anybody that is working with GRID understands our purpose. I signed a contract with GRID. And within that contract with GRID, it states what is expected from anybody who is getting paid city, state, federal funds. We signed the contract to be interceptors, to go out and find out what is going on, who is doing what, and what do we need to do to defuse it. It's about, okay, the information that we got, we came together to talk about what is happening and what we need to do to deal with it. So it ain't about the fact that in the book, Terrence was working with GRID. Terrence got over from what I understand, over $300,000. So how is it that his people, his former gang members, who are now his outreach workers, could be confirmed, or, they could be okay, but then our guys are still active gang members and they're doing this and they're doing that and we're informants. What does that make his people? Because we're under the same umbrella. So to say that we were conspiring to get him out, to take over, is ludicrous.
But in the movie, it makes a point of actually even going into Terrence's former office.
When we went in his office, he was gone. The office was empty. Mike Johnston was still there. Weeds were growing up. Roaches was running around. I mean, the office was abandoned. Nothing was there.
I think that's true, because I think it showed a scene in the movie where he had to kick in the door to retrieve items that happened to still be there, and that's how he got the megaphone. So he actually kicked in the door inside of that building.
So it wasn't the fact that, by that time, I guess the Boys and Girls Club had set up, and he's supposed to have an office in the Boys and Girls Club right there. He had been out of his original office for a length of time, whereas everything had grown up and some of the things were spoiled and the whole bit. So we went in, along with Mike Johnston, to say we could use this as a hub, because we had a hub on the east side already. A lot of my work was done on the east side. That's where it started. So to deal with an abandoned building, and I think if Julian want to do some history, they go back and get some of the film of us cleaning the building, us cutting down weeds. And
I think that was in the movie. It showed some of that.
And so it wasn't the fact that we got him out of there. It was an abandoned building. So to say that we are conspiring, our objective from the vision of P.O.T.S, and when we talk about the history of P.O.T.S, y'all, we sat there and we had meetings as to how we could do this, Crips and Bloods, as to how we could do this. OGs of that status, somebody who had the kind of status to be able to pull some of these youngsters' coattails. And then when I'm hearing that people are saying that I'm hiring these gang members that are still putting guns and dope in these kids' heads. Let me say this for the record. I know what all my guys and girls with up under the umbrella of P.O.T.S was doing when I was around. When I'm able to see them, when we're at that meeting, when we're out on the streets. Now, I don't follow them 24/7. I don't go home with them. I don't know what anybody do once they're out of my sight. I don't know. But I know that just like we can say that with the police or anybody, we don't know what they do once they leave. But, we had a vision. We had an objective. And I know we met that objective, and so the thing that was done behind the scenes, we didn't get on a soapbox and talk about all the things that we're doing.
Any questions? Sandy?
I have a question, and forgive my ignorance. I'm just going to be completely transparent. I don't really need a mic necessarily. Oh, sure. I said I forgive my ignorance, and I'm going to be completely transparent, but honestly, I don't know what P.O.T.S is.
Part of the solution.
Okay, so I was just wondering if you could just speak a little bit more about the organization, because somebody like me might be watching and just not know. Thank you.
Part of the solution.
Okay, so let me give you a little history about Part of the Solution. So Part of the Solution was a effort to slow down or, curb the violence that was happening at the time. Originally, Reverend Kelly wasn't even a part of P.O.T.S. The OGs that came together and kind of developed a blueprint to try to curb everything. It wasn't even geared toward the youth. It was geared toward the parents to reach the youth. So that was the basis of what P.O.T.S originally stood for. Let's be part of the solution. So when we started going to meetings, they suggested that we get Reverend Kelly on board because of his record and because of his background and the things that he had did for the community at the time. So that's how we all ended up being a program at all. So at that time, we started having meetings with community, with law enforcement, with all types of individuals who were interested in getting the problem solved. So when we did that, they went to Reverend Kelly, had him sign the contracts, got everybody in order, and we started doing the work. So that was the thing. Okay, well, my thing is this. Terrence Roberts left a void when that incident happened. And with that void, do you just want the work to stop? I mean, okay, you're no longer in the picture. Is there not supposed to be a program because you're not there to run it or you're not there to do it? The work still has to be done. The problem's still there. So why not get the proper individuals in the proper places and to get this rolling so we can figure out how to be the solution? And that's how P.O.T.S came about. And like I said, I mean, it didn't even have nothing to do. It didn't have nothing to do with what Prodigal Son was doing. It had everything to do with the parents grabbing your child and being there for your child, making the difference so your child doesn't join a gang, having the resources available so your child doesn't have to join a gang, having a decent job that so you can provide for your family so your child doesn't have to be in that environment. That was the basis of the program.
So if you look at the documentary, there's a scene where there's a community meeting that's taking place at District 2. This was on the heels of a string of murders and a particular murder in general. There's a piece where Gerald and I are having a conversation about during this community meeting. None of that was about Terrence. As a matter of fact, Terrence had been away from community for a long time since that shooting. That's why I'm telling you the stitching of that together looks like, okay, here's a shooting and the next day I was in the Holly working. There was a shooting and Terrence was gone. That was the first time he reappeared at a community meeting with Julian with cameras rolling. It was kind of like one of those reality shows where, you got that moment. Well, this was the moment that Terrence reemerged and you saw that conversation between Reverend Kelly and Terrence. So the paper I was talking about in that movie was all of the assets in the community that would come together and that were working together to address the violence, which included all of the assets which is in the community. It's like, what's on the paper? What do you bring to the table? Who do you call? How do we link in? That's what we were talking about. And then and with Terrence showing up and with that camera being there, it became a discussion between Rev Kelly and Terrence. And it was, if you know that they were trying to kill me, why don't you call my attorney? That was a moment in the movie, but out of context, you wouldn't know what that meeting was all about. Question right here. or statement?
It's a question and a statement. I just want to know, as community. Oh, so I guess I'll stand that up. So it's a question and a statement. I just want to know, as community, how long do we watch someone go through crises or are literally at the break of a nervous breakdown, a snap, crackle, pop, that we either intervene or we just let them snap and crack and pop? It wasn't days before the rally, it was months before the rally. My son was on a skateboard with a red Elmo shirt on. My son wasn't gangbanging. As a mom, I asked, community, my son is hurting, what do I do? You know what community told me? Terrence ain't in a good place right now. You know what happened 3 months later? My phone rang off the hook and said he done shot this boy, young man, however we want to classify that. He done shot him on that same pavement that my son was accused of destroying the plastic coating on that property, right? So, as a mom, whose son, his dad is doing 115 years, do we clear that? See, because that's in the book too. It wasn't gang banging. It was a drug deal gone bad in Montbello. So you know where my son is now? He's pressing the pipeline. Because didn't nobody want to hear me in community because Terrence wasn't in a good place. But now Terrence has been uplifted to say he can lead the town. Terrence can be the mayor. But my son didn't have that opportunity because he had on a red Elmo shirt in Park Hill and he wasn't no gang member. And you know what they told me? Terrence is right. Gangs is at an all-time high. But what's the biggest gang member over here? The reformed activists? So again, community, how long do we watch people be in crisis before we step in? Because he wasn't in the right place, right? He wasn't in the right place, right? I went to faith. I went to community, and I even took a part of big community. And I still have 4 other children that I have to save. So it's not just about mine. I wasn't trying to talk to him about my son. I was trying to say that situation, and I said that I had the power. I ain't respected gangbanging since July 89 when my cousin lost his life on 33rd and Fillmore. Here a month from California, and he died on the streets of Denver. So I ain't never respected gangbanging. But it is what it is. So it's passion, it's anger. And at the end of the day, that was triggers. It was triggers because everybody didn't get their voice. And sometimes your story don't mean nothing. Sometimes your story don't mean nothing. But know that it's triggers, it's elevated. And it's elevated every time we see him on the poster, every time we see him on the news. He's reformed, he's saved. But at the end of the day, we see that he's on the brink of a nervous breakdown again because he's ticking. So as community, what do we do to save him? Because it's not just saving him, it's saving everybody. Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am. What's your name?
My name is Monique.
Okay, Monique. I'm so glad that you touched on that. That's so relevant to what we're talking about today. Because about 5 months, you're absolutely right. 5 months before he shot that boy, I was in Salt Lake City, Utah, working. He was doing the camo movement, and I felt that he was slipping back into his old habits. He was slipping back into his old things. At that time, I had a shop right here on the corner, a computer store and a detail shop. So I interjected and I talked to Terrence and I asked Terrence, what's going on with you? It looks like you're going back to showbiz. What's going on? And his answer was, oh, I'm just doing me. I'm just, you know what I'm saying? So at that point in time, I didn't know that he was going through financial crisis about the center, and I didn't know what was going on. That wasn't my business. I had a shop to run. But at the same time, as a concerned citizen watching what's going on, I felt that it was my responsibility to interject and ask him what was going on. Because I was actually for what he was doing. I wasn't against Terrence. Like Purnell said before he left, I'm not his enemy. I mean, I love Terrence. I don't have no ill will toward him, and I don't hope nothing bad for him. Everything that God has for him, I hope he receives. But at the same time, be honest in who you are. Be honest in what's going on. Don't be afraid to ask for help because your pride won't let you. And that's what was going on. That's what led to that. And I'm sorry about, what happened with you, but we all seen it coming. And I would have hoped at that point in time that there was a bigger entity than me that could have reached him in order for him not to be able to, do that and go down that road. But for you to come back in the mannerism in which you've came back is a slap in the face to everything that we've all went through. You see what I'm saying? Because we went through it with you. Whether you choose to, believe that or whatever, whether you choose to look at that, we went through that with you, And I mean, that was a traumatizing day for all of us. Zenobia, you was there. I know, I was there. And, like I said, for you to make this all about self is a slap in the face to every individual in this community, in this room, in this realm that even supports you. And I mean that because sometimes you got to get away from self. And if you can't get away from self, how can you help anybody? What can you do for the good people of the state of Colorado? That's what I want to know. What can you possibly give to the good people of the state of Colorado? We deserve to know, honestly. I mean, I'm just as curious as the next citizen of what you can offer the good people of the state of Colorado in the mind state that you're in, because you're still there. And that's my fear. My fear is after this election, when he loses this election, what do you do next? What's going to be your next move? And I'm really fearful of that. Honestly.
It's interesting. We open up this conversation with how many of you have been a part of book clubs and discussion groups, etc. And it's so interesting when I hear folks who are part of discussion groups that are far removed from the center of all this trauma. It's easier to talk about it from a distant standpoint. But when you talk to some of us about a book or a movie, it reopens up trauma after trauma after trauma, and it hasn't even been addressed. And so for those who are saying, you know what, I can have a book club and discuss this, but we as a community shouldn't discuss it. What you're seeing is a ticking time bomb of everyone you bump into that you ask about that book and they haven't had a chance to process, come together, work. We're in a community where everybody needs some mental health treatment in some way, shape, or form. You don't know the trauma in this community. And for some of you just sitting here, you're being traumatized hearing what other folks have gone through when you was like, damn, it was just a book. It was a good movie. I learned some stuff about the community that I didn't know about. And I'm like, I don't know what you think you're learning or what you think you saw, but you need to have deeper conversations because there's layers and layers and layers about babies being murdered, vigils, blood left out on concrete where OSHA and them don't even come clean it up after. I'm talking about community members waiting to go clean up blood off of concrete. not only blood, but innards and all of those different things. And so with that being said, this is an important conversation, which also could lead to some, I don't know, healing, but at least awareness, because this is bigger than Terrence, it's bigger than the Rev, it's bigger than Carl and myself, etc. I want to ask.
Well, even while you're on that
please.
point, let me say, we talk about opening wounds. You know, there are those that are still trying to heal from this. You know, and as you're opening up wounds, my thing is, if anybody do anything wrong, people want to hold them accountable. So even in this scenario, who's to be held accountable? You know, you heard me say earlier, I feel like this Julian is pimping out Park Hill, pimping out Terrence. Somebody's getting paid. If this is going all the way to Hollywood, and every time we see a red carpet, every time we hear about all of the acclimates and all of the awards that these films sold out venues to see this documentary. You know, books all over the place, you know, on cable now. Who's going to be holding who accountable for this? The people, how do you get paid off the sufferings and the lies told about a community? And then my thing is, again, I read the book twice just so that I could go back and, you know, understand what I read the first time. And when somebody just blatantly just lie, and I know a lot of things behind the scenes like a lot of people don't know. I know the trauma that people who went that, women, if I turn the microphone over to them, the women and who was traumatized by all of this, you know, it will, you know, really cause you to stop back and say, man, wait a minute. Who is to, you know, even as like my lawyers, Diane Z over there, you know, I mean, you see a lot. Who is to be held accountable? You know, when we deal with indictment, you have to have some backup. You have to have something to be able to substantiate what you said. If somebody comes and say, you know, Brother Jeff, I talked to you and you told me this, and you know good and well that didn't come out of your mouth. It's between your word and that. Who's going to hold the producers, the promoters, all those people getting paid off of them? Who's going to hold them accountable? Who's going to force a Julian and a Terrence to sit before me and us and say, you said this, said that? Who?
Well,
so that's
my
question.
Just think of the imagery. I want to share something with you all about stitching and timing. Just think about this, stitching and timing. I don't know how you perceive the movie. I can talk more about the movie than I can about the book, because the book is real traumatizing to me, because it has so much. The movie I can compartmentalize. You know what I mean? It's really about what happened on that day and the outcome of the trial of that particular day. And so someone who sat through all of that knows all of that. I know all of the different little pieces. But here's what I want to share about. I want to run by you in terms of the movie that I was able to see. It opens up with a picture of a woman talking, right? There's a scene of a woman talking, and then you hear gunshots, pop, 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 in the interview, right? The woman talking is named Jerry Grimes, rest in peace, and she was the director of this Hope Center. She's a community icon. I won't get into the details of all of that day, but if you put 2 and 2 together, you know that day wasn't about unity, right? And this is just a critique. I could be totally wrong, but I'm giving you an informed opinion of what I saw. The movie would have you believe that all of these bloods were coming in on Terrence and then pop, 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 right? Did you see all them bodies coming in and then pop, 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 right? Go back and watch that interview with Jerry Grimes and listen to the pop, pop, pop. And see in that scene if you see a whole bunch of people that were charging Terrence Roberts. Look for yourself. Don't ask me. Look for yourself. When you heard pop, 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 you saw people running the opposite direction in that scene. Is that right? Yeah. Go look at what you're being seen, because in my opinion, and it might not be the narrative, but I'm just saying, someone who studies media, knows psychology and how you tell stories, it looks like all these folks are descending on an individual and then pop, pop, pop. All of those individuals descended after pop, pop, pop. Pop, 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 and then folks were coming out of the woodworks to see what was. Would you like to share? Please. I was there. Okay, you wanna, can I just hand you the microphone? Can I just hand you, you don't have to get on camera, but can I hand you the mic so we could hear?
Sure.
I'm sorry. I'm really suffering from PTSD right now because I was there. I was 10 feet away, right in front of the Boys and Girls Club. I just drove in front with, at that time, my significant other. He was standing over that man. The man was on his face. He shot him like this. The gun, I'll never forget. My entire life went off by almost 5 times. I don't know, I sort of blacked out. No one was around. It was just him and that man. I was an eyewitness. This is the first time I've ever publicly stated that. I was told to go underground and not to speak because I could be a target. And then he jumped in his car and he took off. I don't know what else to tell you.
See, now, if Terrence and Julian was here, they would have an opportunity to hear what is said and try to explain. You said your version, your way. Now, this is what witnesses and others are saying or seeing. How do you explain this? What can you say about it? You know, and so maybe that was a reason why none of us was invited to go to any of their premieres and any of those things, because to be able to say, wait a minute, it didn't happen that way.
Is it controversial to share what you saw? Or do we have to be held hostage by a movie or a book or somebody else's story? When I'm telling you, if you hear pop, 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 and ain't nobody over there, and the folks that was there was going this way, and then you see folks coming out from different perspectives. If you watch that movie closely, it looks like all that stuff is happening at the same time. And a lot of these events are happening at the same time. And a lot of this is being put together. I wouldn't have known, well, I know, but you wouldn't have known that I'm sitting next to the person who organized the rally following the burning of the Holly and invited others to it. And so with that being said, Bishop Dimmer, and I know the work that you've done for a long time. There have been Terrences before Terrences. There's been Brother Jeffs before Brother Jeffs. There's been Revs before Revs. There's been bishops before bishops. There's been you before you. But from the standpoint of where we're at and all that you have been attempting to organize and coalesce, where do we go? How do we heal? Where do we go with even this conversation? You know, because we're going to exit these doors and folks have already decided we're going to do something else. I'm trying to figure out how that something else creates something better, then continues the same cycle of trauma and, you know, that bubbling up of, what's going on?
Thank you, Brother Jeff. And I just want to speak to, there was something the young lady said that was the beautician, the Nobia. Oh, yeah. And my brother next to her. That was so important. First of all, community. because that march, the original march they show on the film was something that I had sent out a clarion call to for community. And I'm going to be very transparent. I find myself all the time disappointed. I'm Bishop Jerry Demmer. I'm a pastor of the Absolute Word Church. I'm disappointed in clergy. Somebody said faith has to step up. Where's the faith leaders? Where is faith at? Because I invited almost every pastor in the city to say our children are killing each other. We're burning down the holly. And my understanding is, maybe I don't have the right knowledge, but we're burning down the holly for nothing at all, because who they said killed Michael Asbury it wasn't a blood or a crip issue on what happened there. I'm asking faith to step up and come on. Because guess who has to deal with it? I'm forever bearing children has been killed. I just did a 12-year-old about 3 months ago. I'm forever having to deal with drugs in the community. I have to deal with murder in the community. And it comes to us, the faith, it comes to the pastors, it comes to the churches. Then what are we as faith leaders going to do and come together? Because our community needs us. Secondly, when I was raised, I'm maybe a little older than most folks, but the Rev got me. Me and the Rev grew up together. And we were in groups together as teenagers. But it called the village. It was called a village. It takes a village to raise a family. And we don't have accountability anymore because we don't even speak to our neighbors. We can live next to each other 10, 15 years and not even know who you are. But when I came up, the neighbor could whoop my behind, the one down the street could whoop my behind. And we've heard with the children, because it's very hard when the parents say, you don't say nothing to Pookie and Sally Sausage Head. And we're trying to help you with them, and you say, back up off of my child. So that's right there. That's another issue, Brother Jeff, that we need to say, I am my brother's keeper.
Let me just ask a quick question, because in the movie, I think it was Andre who had a conversation with Terrence after the shooting, and the narration, and by the way, I think the movie is also more about Julian as well, you know, because he's kind of like central of the particular movie, and his awakening or his awareness or his stumbling upon and maybe stumbling into or whatever. After the shooting, there was an exchange, and I believe Terrence said, we're all going to learn something or get something or gain something from this. What can we gain from a positive standpoint, if anything, from this book, this movie, this moment, this gathering? What can we all do that will bring us out in a unified manner to address the issues that Terrence was working on and everybody else has been working on? What can we do? And then we'll go over to Barbara.
I don't know if I have the answer for everybody for what we can do. I can give an individual answer. And again, I'm going to say it again, coming together, breaking down barriers and taking responsibility for what happened. Well, that happened over there. That ain't my problem. That's over in your house. That ain't. Well, it's going to eventually get to your house. It's going to eventually come to your house. What are you doing before it gets to your house? So I think we can come together, Brother Jeff. First of all, this community meetings off the chain. We need to do this all the time. And we shouldn't have to wait until a negative documentary come out that came out on the Holly before we get together. What happens? We are not proactive, we are reactive. So we wait till something happens, then we want to say, now let's solve the problem. Let's solve the problem now by coming together early before it ever happened. That's just one of the things I think we can do. We can begin to organize in the community. I've been trying to organize in the men with the preachers forever to get involved. But I think every individual, I think we have a saying that each one reach one and teach one. And so I think that all of us have to become responsible and take responsibility. I got a whole bunch to say on community, but take responsibility for what happened. And stop letting other folks tell our story or control our story. We need to control our community. We need to control how we partner together. How do we make a difference? We're waiting for other folks to make a difference in our community. The fact of the matter is, enough of us to come together and make a difference in our communities if we'll stop being divided and if we will come together. And so with that said, my sister over there.
Barbara, we're going to go to you, and then we're going to wrap up. And when we wrap up, we're going to start with Zenobia, and we're going to just kind of get your final thoughts as it relates to where we're at. And there's James Chapman. I'll definitely recognize you in just a second. Barbara, please.
So, Brother Jeff, one thing you didn't know, you may have known, I was there too. I was there before this all happened. I was the one that managed the grid grant for the city. I was the accountant for that grant. I was the one from the community that told Paul to give each and every one of you a piece of that grant. Paul Callanan. Paul, I think, somewhat pimped the community. He didn't want to give money out because you wanted money. But you had money, Paul. You got the $2.5 million grant every year. I spoke on behalf of the community working in Department of Safety. I always did that. I probably met you, and I probably met you too way back in the day. Terrence wasn't a lot of pressure because he didn't know how to put together his invoices and get paid. I was there to give him his invoices back because I was the one helping him to develop those invoices so that we could pay him at that point over $30,000 we owed him. That's why I was there. I stepped out. I'm from the East Side, raised from the East Side. That's where I know you from. And you have to have somebody that cares about the community in those places to make the people with the money give the community money. We have to provide some type of institution where we can get the money. A lot of people don't go to church anymore because the government is providing all of these services. But if we do it right, the churches can get the money. The church could have got that $2.5 million. Brother Jeff could have got that $2.5 million. All you have to do is apply for it. Rev could have got that $2.5 million every year. All you do is apply for it. Put together a proposal. Somebody knows how to manage a grant. I managed a $50 million DNC grant. I managed the grid grant. We need to apply for those grants. We need to get those grants, and we need to distribute those grants to people that we know is doing the work in the community. I was walking toward Terrence to give him those invoices when I saw him shoot the kid. I was there with Pastor Dimmer and hearing everything standing over there. Shortly after that community ended, I walked toward him. And yeah, but I've had PSTD before Terrence because I'm from the hood, so PTSD. So, you know, I had to go testify. When I went back to work in Department of Safety, I saw Terrence go through there in shackles. And he looked at me and I looked at him.
See, Barbara, I didn't want to put you on for that.
I know.
Give her the mic. Give her the mic.
Because you were there. You saw the agencies that was getting money. And Particle Son was one of them. So, but that was not really listed in the book in the areas of all the monies, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that he got. But
$2.5 million a year.
So that wasn't in the book.
Right.
So the thing is,
And I saw my little shadow there. They put that shadow out. They didn't put that part there.
see, in the book, now it has said that there was a confidential informant in Silhouettes, saying that he was there when he heard Carl and Rodney and them tell him to go put hands on, tell March to go put hands. We think go ahead. Who was the one behind the Silhouettes?
So I think I figured that one out. I think that was him, actually. You know, from the experience that he had with National Geographic with the previous stunt, I believe he was able to pull that one off again. So I believe that the guy in the silhouette was actually Terrence Roberts.
Wow, this. You see how a story can become a story and a story on top of a story. I want to pass it to someone else who was in the book. And this is, before I go to Chap, I want to go to Desiree, because you are also in the book, and et cetera. What are your impressions of the book, the movie, and what would you like to share as it relates to your story?
Well, full disclosure, I have not read the book. It's very triggering for me. I've tried to glance at it, and every time I do, it just takes me to a place where I don't want to be. Contrary to what the book makes you believe, I am Terrence's first wife. I co-founded Prodigal Son with Terrence, and we have children together. And one thing I can say is, I think we can all agree, we all need healing. Terrence too. I say that to say Terrence did a lot of time, which included being in CSP on 23-hour lockdown, and you can only imagine what that can do to one's psyche, okay? He got out of jail and he and I started Prodigal Son together. And a lot of people wanted us to umbrella under them, to get under them, and we decided not to do that. But in the end, Terrence ended up being very successful. He's very intelligent. He presents himself very well. Terrence is a survivor, and he is going to do what he needs to do to survive. But I say all that to say, prior to the shooting, everybody knew that Terrence needed help. Terrence was traumatized, and to me, it seemed like everybody used him as a puppet to get their agenda pushed across the board. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, me and my children, my family, we suffered. We suffered financially, we suffered psychologically, in other ways I choose not to divulge. Restraining orders, all that, been there, done that. Me and Terrence have been up and down and all around several times. I'm not interested in vilifying Terrence. It's not in my best interest to vilify Terrence. We share children together. But I'm disappointed because prior to all of this, I reached out to many members of the community and said, can you please help me? Can you please help Terrence? Can you please help our family? And everyone turned a blind eye to what we were dealing with behind closed doors and used Terrence for their agenda. Now, yeah, eventually he snapped, crackled, and popped. Anybody who knows Terrence really wouldn't be surprised about how the situation played out and the situation that he put himself in. What I'm upset about is Julian and how Julian has been able to come into our community and create this narrative that only he is eating off of. And what floors me the most is he's playing victim to, oh, my life is in danger and I'm having to go in hiding and et cetera, et cetera. But he didn't think about what that did to me and my children. My name was used in that book against my will. My children's names were used in that book against their will. I feel like we want to talk about trauma. I don't really think there's too many people up here that have been more traumatized by this book and movie than me and my kids. I have children who are afraid to go to school. I have children who are getting picked on. I've even had death threats supposedly made on me and my family to the point to where I had to go to my friends and family and say, how do I get help? I went up to the office and asked Rev and several people, how can you guys help me because I don't feel safe? Julian put me in hell's fire and didn't look back. I want you guys to know Terrence, from what I'm being told, didn't make a dime off the movie or the documentary. Julian is the only one capitalizing off of this in this story. Now, Terrence is going to use a narrative in the media, and at the end of the day, you really can't fault him for doing what he has to do to. This is such a hard position for me to be in. It's a very hard position to be in. But you can't fault Terrence for taking a narrative that was going to be spun regardless and using it to his benefit. My qualm is that no one is protecting me and my children. We want to talk about saving the community, but nobody is really interested in protecting me and my children. I'm saying this firsthand because I went for protection and everybody was like, sorry, I'll call you back. And I never got those calls, Rev included. And that hurt my heart because I needed help. I didn't know where to go or what to do. And it just, there's a lot of things in the book. There's a lot of omissions of truth in that book, from what I understand, just in regards to me. But what I don't understand is how a journalist can come in from outside the community, use our names, use our stories, paint us in such a light, and then just walk away with money in his hand. Like, we're not monkeys in the zoo that you're there to observe and document. We have rights, we have families, we have children. So where is the recourse for that? Everybody wants to be mad at Terrence, but let's call a spade a spade. This is old. We're always pitting blacks against blacks, friends against friends, cousins against cousins. When do we turn around and say, hold on though, this guy's the one pulling all the strings. This guy's the one making all the money. And meanwhile, my family, you know, even today, threats are being thrown. It's not a safe environment. What can be done to protect people like us from being exploited by people like Julian? That's what I want to know.
Let me hit that real quick, because I didn't even know I was in the movie until the movie was out.
Yeah, me.
I didn't even know. And then I finally seen Terrence. Terrence said, Bishop Dimmer, you know you're in the movie. I said, I am? I didn't know it was being taped, the march. So I don't even know who taped it. But when you talk about exploitation, what I'm saying is I didn't receive a phone call. I didn't ask nobody, asked me, can I have the permission to put me in a movie marching? Nobody asked me nothing. And so if somebody got paid, where's our money? And I'm playing, I don't want no money. But what I'm saying is, I think the sister's right. It's time for us to stop getting pimped.
And that's, Desiree, I'm glad that you touched on that too, because I think me and you kind of alluded to that conversation when we finally did get a chance to talk. And I let you know, what my feelings about Terrence was at that time. And just like I said, and I continue to say it, I mean, I feel sorry for Terrence. I don't hate Terrence. I don't vilify Terrence. I understand the pressure that Terrence was under. The only problem that I have with the situation is the accountability portion. You know what I'm saying? And the taking accountability for the actions and not trying to, use other individuals for the actions that you displayed at that time. That's the only issue that I have, is that you need to be accountable. Don't put it off on the hood. Don't put it off on the Crenshaw Mafias. Don't put it off on this. Take accountability, and that's it. You see what I'm saying? I mean, if we all just took accountability for the things that we do, because even in the midst of the movie, you see what I'm saying? I got in trouble with the P.O.T.S, but before the P.O.T.S program actually kicked off, I got in trouble. I wasn't even able to actively participate in the P.O.T.S program because of my legal troubles. And at that time, I mean, I took accountability. I was responsible. Went to trial, lost at trial, had to do, whatever the situation, whatever took place, I had to deal with that. You see what I'm saying? And my family had to deal with that. My kids had to deal with that, just like you. We all victims of the whole situation.
Now, that's a key point, Carl. I want to see if I heard you say this correctly. Your troubles came before you were even able to engage and be a part of P.O.T.S. Because the movie, as I would see it, says you were a part of P.O.T.S and you were able to get all of this kind of recourse because of your relationship. And, you said, I'm working for Callow and all of that stuff. Remember I said this is stitched together at different points. You never got a chance to be a part of the solution as it relates to, yes, you founded it, but as a part of a funded program under Open Door Youth Gang Alternatives, you were not a part of that.
No, sir.
I think that's important information too. Yeah, you can in just a second. Chap Rap, just quickly, hand him a mic for a second. If you saw the book, if you saw the movie, and you're listening to this conversation, what's your take? And then the hour is nigh. The hour is nigh.
People have been coming at me and it's like, oh, I seen you in the movie. And I was like, no, I ain't seen the movie. I ain't got stars. I really don't have $9.50 to see the movie. But the young man is saying that a lot of things is fiction. It's like my family and Brother Jeff's family, it's been like peace, love, and prosperity in Park Hill. And those ones that have a story that was fictionated and created someone like me, my mama, God bless my mama. Say started the Denver Drum newspaper in 1969 and all that. And I met Mr. Kelly in 1979, and it was complicated. But the movie was like, when we made examples of our neighborhood, and it was like 98% of us live like this. And when someone say that they the 1%, and if it wasn't for them, that our neighborhood wouldn't exist. And I turned to a young man back in the day and I was like, this Brother Jeff filled my shoes. When I came in the situation and I'm in the wheelchair, and he ain't never looked back. As we live throughout the 8 days and we live our lives, and it's like the movie came out and it was like, they can't do the backdrop and say that the 99% is how we, us, and ours live. We, us, and ours live on peace, love, and prosperity. From 5 Points in the Holly and the 5 Points.
And you also had the gang violence reduction program. A lot of that imagery and spray painted stuff is that's your work.
Right. Say AGVD. It was created from Mr. Gene Askew down in the 5 Points, right next to the Chicken Shack, right there next to Miss Zonas. And you, my mentor, Mr. Leon Kelly, is like on my mama in 1977. It's like you changed my life as well as we changed our lives. On this day, it's like we really don't live on fiction. We live on real facts. We live on lives. We live on taking care of our children and our elders and our kids. And that's it, by any means necessary. It's like,
Chap Rap, with that being said, can we give everybody a round of applause for being here, because it is that hour. Can you hand that microphone to Zenobia, please? And this is more than just a discussion. It's a healing. It's a healing as well, and an opportunity to have voices and stories that haven't had a chance to be told, to tell those stories. So with that being said, just final words as we move forward. And again, can we give a round of applause to the R Network for covering and streaming and doing all of that? I want to say hello to Patty from the Westward and all of the media folks. We see the post here. Zenobia.
Yes. Okay, so final words for me.
My problem too. Thank you.
Final words for me are community and working together. It's really been bothering me that what happened in the Holly to cause the whole situation in the Holly that day. It's just really bothered me that you would be the prodigal son, you would be the gang activist, right? You would say, let's work on the community, and then turn around and say, but the Crips can't be here. The ex-Crips can't be here because they burned down the Holly, right? For me, when I met Terrence and we started hanging out before this, I was like so excited because I'm like, man, like I wasn't a part of that burning down the Holly, right? But I was a part of the Crip hood. So I want to be able to build back the Holly. And this is my opportunity, you know, to show that, you know, the ex-Crips or the Crips are wanting to come together as a community and get the youth back together. So I was totally crushed when all of this ended up happening. And I couldn't pursue that with Terrence. It hurt a lot of people. I talked to my other barber, Jesse Pittman, in which they call him P-Knuckle. He was my barber at the time. He's moved out of state after this because, again, not only were we worried about the issues with Terrence Roberts, we were worried about the issues with the government and the higher-ups, the power that he had. We were worried about the Bloods, the power that he had with them. And so he's recently told me why he moved out of Colorado and won't come back here. He's afraid. He's afraid of what may happen to him because of what Terrence Roberts stirred up. So, I mean, I just kind of want to put it out there that this is huge. It's way bigger than what we think, right? And I think that as a community, when we realize that we're here for the community and for the youth, we work together as Crips and Bloods. We don't separate each other, right? Because when we separate each other, the kids see that. And then they're able to say, okay, well, I don't work with the Bloods or the Crips. But if we're telling them, let's come together, right? Then we have to be together at the top as well. It's just like the same pyramid we've been living on. We all, you're being watched at the top. And these kids are a reflection of us. Okay, there was more I had to say, but I'm really at a loss for words right now.
Thank you, Zenobia.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. Exactly. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you for sharing your story. Deloy, final words.
Final words. I think I learned some new stuff in this room today. Hopefully everyone else did. I didn't know how many people actually were there. Like, that event happened and I was still in prison. I didn't know all the people that were victimized by that situation. I'm not into reading the book or the documentary. I have no bias either way. My thing is, we need to do better overall going forward as a community. We really do. And we've seen what we have been doing has not slowed down or derailed the youth and gang violence. So we must get back to the blackboard and figure out what is the proper road, because the roads we've been traveling have actually helped it excel at a faster rate. You go look now, there are new gangs popping up every single week. And the reason why is because kids don't really want to join the traditional gangs. So they're forming their own little cliques to protect themselves. But once they get into one skirmish with someone else, that is their rival. Now they are an official gang. So we must do a better job protecting the youth as a community in order to slow down the recruitment.
Thank you, Deloitte. Carl, give him a round of applause. Thank you, Deloitte, for sharing your story and sharing those words. Carl.
My final thoughts is this. Perception is powerful. And when I say that, I mean, just like Deloitte alluded to, one bad apple can spoil a bunch. And just like he said, the work still needs to be done. The work's not getting done. And because of these narratives that are being painted, the work's not able to be done. So there's voids that are being set all the time. There's just voids all over the place. And these kids and these teens, and they're real. What do I want to say? They're real, like, impressionable. They're real impressionable, and they're easy to be influenced. And they take certain things that are being said for gospel, and they take them and they run with them, and it limits the next person's ability to actually do the job. And so what I would like to see from this is to just, change the perception. Change what you see. See things for what you see them for, not for what the next person sees them for. Don't let your impression of somebody be somebody else's. Don't allow for somebody's rhetoric to become yours. Judge for yourself. Judge individuals for yourself. Judge the people who, because anybody can make a book. Anybody can make a movie. I could go out today and portray somebody to be who they're not, but like I said, perception is everything. So unless I do the proper research, unless I actually know, then I can't paint that I can't paint that picture properly. So that's, my final words. And like I said, I just pray for Terrence.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Carl. Rev, you're gonna get the final words. So I'm gonna come over here to Desiree, and then you're gonna put a bow on all of this and wrap it up. Desiree.
At the end of the day, this is deep rooted in trauma. And I think that we need to address that head on, and therapy is essential. But one thing I can say is that I feel like, once again, the Black community continues to pit itself against each other, even with this mayoral election. And what you guys don't realize is that we're falling for a banana in the tailpipe. While we're busy fighting each other, they're coming in and they're taking everything. So we can sit here and vilify whoever we want to vilify, but it's bigger than all of that. And I just wish we as the Black community get healing, not only for us and our children, but what I recently learned in my trip to Hawaii is for our ancestors as well. This is a cycle, and I'm interested in stopping it. I want my children to feel safe. I don't want any harm to come to Terrence Roberts. I don't want any harm to come to Carl or anybody else. We all grew up together, and it pains me to see everybody fighting like they are. And I just want us to all step back, identify the bigger picture, and realize it's bigger than this. It's bigger than the shooting in the Holly that day. And the only way to beat it is to address it head on and stop entertaining the circus, because it's people's real life. It's my children's lives, and it's not a game. It's not funny. It's not a Facebook post or a Facebook Live. This is our lives, and I just need you guys to be aware of that and go forward with that truth.
Thank you, guys.
Just in my closing remarks, the community means so much, and I'm listening still again to community. The community means everything to me. I grew up in this community. I grew up on 25th and Holly. 1964, 8 years old, moved over there. My parents met on 5 Points, 1943. Got married in 1945. This community means everything to me. So anything affects this community, it affects me. It affects me. So I would just say in closing, and we got to talk about it. We got to talk. I worked on the last 2 crime bills with Governor P.O.T.S. with Brandon Davis, Senator Buckner. I worked with them, and I don't see where money went in the community. So you helped me. You helped me. Yeah, help me. Because, and that was one of the biggest things with me. Where is the money for our community? I have a program called stepbystepforward.com. If you just go to stepbystepforward.com and look at the program that we have with the mentorship for boys, for life skill training. One thing I've learned being in Hope Online Schools is that we got to do this thing together. We talked about solutions, Brother Jeff. But while I'm trying to talk to the children and try to change that, we got to talk to the adults. Because it doesn't matter what we're trying to do with kids if we can't get to the adults. Reverend Kelly, the Bible says, you can't spoil the house unless you bind the strong man. So we got to attack both together and not just one separate. So stepbystepforward.com, read about what our program does in community, what we want to get done in community, and what we never get any money to help us to do. We do it out of tithe and offering. We can't just keep doing it. We're poor. Can I drop that? The majority of the pastors I know is poor. They ain't got no money. We don't get no money in the church. We don't get no money in the churches. Hello. No, we don't get no money. So we do that kind of work, but the people that do the work should be the people that get the money. And not the people that, up underneath that umbrella and fake like they do the work and care nothing about our community. They're never around when we're killed. They're never around with fentanyl. They're never around with all the gangbanging. They're not there, but they get paid for it. And that's what I said. It's time to stop getting pimped. You need to put the money from the government into the community if you're going to raise money and you're going to do bills that say it's going to represent the community.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to give Rev the final words, but I could tell you one of the things that we're missing is the high diving board over there at Skyland. Yeah. See, if you're a kid and you ain't climbed that high diving board, and you had that little green mesh little thing where you put your clothes in, and they gave you that little safety pin, that little baby pin, then you had to go in there. Only thing you needed to go into that swimming pool was to take a shower. You had to get in the shower. This we swam outside. There wasn't no inside swimming. I know they call it Hiawatha Davis, but if you're from around here, that's called Skyler. And if you're from really around here, that ain't Martin Luther King, that's 32nd. Come on. That's 32nd Avenue. And so if you think about all of the things we had in our community, the most important thing we had was each other. Everywhere you looked, you saw yourself. You was a pirate. Yep. You was wearing that uniform. Remember, you stuffed them little pads and them little knee pads in there, and them little buttons that clip on your side. So all of those different things. And Mr. Kearney, Mr. Cummings, the young sisters with Tony Wells sending folks to the Olympics. This community, Harry Hollins, this community is full of genius. That's right. Now you could talk about some of the suffering and some of the pain, but who's going to tell the story of all of we got a gold medalist from our community in here. Ron Lyles, he said was one of the best fights Muhammad Ali ever had. Came from here. That's right. You had Sonny Liston living up the street and around the corner. The Monaco Theater, the Crest Theater. Monaco, it was a drive-in where you put your little speaker on the side, or you go sit up on that swing set up in the front under that big screen. See, we know about community. We August Fest, everything. We know community. Capri Chicken was right over there. Jim's, right around the corner was a skating rink, and before that, a bowling alley. So, when are we going to focus on all the stuff that we have, as opposed to letting people constantly paint us in stereotypes and saying that we're deficit, which leads to over-policing, which leads to a community-to-prison pipeline? Teach our kids and ourselves our greatness. Shout out to the teachers that are in the building. We should give them a round of applause. And with that being said, thank you all again. Rev Kelly, you get the final words.
Thank y'all.
For me to sit back here and scan the audience, it causes me to go back in years. I often tell folks now that I feel like Moses in the latter years. I've been looking for little Jacob, Joshua's, and Caleb's, and others to come forward. I've been trying over the last number of years to get my platter back into a plate mode. I have to repent often, Brother Jeff, saying, I don't want to do this anymore. Many of the ones I started with, you in your late 40s, 50s right now. I knew you when you were kids. Try to do the little bit that I could. We're talking about over 4 decades. Remembering how it was, and Brother Jeff just made me sit and reminisce how Park Hill was, how the East Side was, when the Trips was there, how it originally started. I can remember James, your mom, our conversations. I could remember these things. I can remember the little bit that I try to do with many of those in this room. Desiree, I can remember when you and Terrence came to my house, when y'all were going through challenges. I can remember the conversations that we've had, the concerns that you had. I can remember those. I wish I could be all things to all people. I wish I could go back and fulfill all the needs that had come before me. I have to sometimes cry out, I couldn't understand when my mom and dad would get up early in the morning, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And my mom would be in the bathroom because there were 6 kids in a 2-bedroom house. And she had to get up early in order to take care of her needs. I couldn't understand that, but then I found myself getting up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, meditating, praying. The conversation that me and you had. I would sit in my closet and hear your suffering, your concerns. I wish I had the means to fix this world. But I think as to the little bit that I've been able to do over these 40 years, if the people would say that, Rev, if you hadn't done what you've done, we could imagine our problem could have been much worse. Carl, the conversations we've had years ago. Tracy, Barbara, Ms. Ruby, the conversations that when we seen your little kids growing up, now they're grown, they're men and women. Dolores, when I beat you at checkers, remember that? Dementia setting in already. Yeah. Zenobia, when I look at you years ago, you had little Rodney, you had, I couldn't understand how is it that big Rodney could get all these little girls and have these babies. What do you, I sit back. Pat, years back, when you just started the Westward and all of that, the conversations we've had back in the days, I think of myself sometimes as Moses standing on the mount knowing that he wasn't going to get over to the promised land. But he was able to see the people go over. It is my satisfaction, Jason and Mindy, to know the helps that have come when I needed help. Out of 10 phone calls, 9 is somebody needs something from me. But that 10th, Rev, I don't need anything. I don't want anything. I'm just praying about you. I just want to say thank you. Thank you. Thinking about my mom and dad and Portia, my first cousin back there. We've been through a lot. So as I close out, and even to have this little space, when I say that I took this very personal when I felt that my people were being attacked. It's one thing to attack me, but when you put that type of drama on my people to allow them to be concerned about their safety, then I do take it very personal, very personal. when I took the time to be on the stand, the witness stand for Terrence. And one of the questions that Marshall, his attorney, asked me, what was the feelings or the thoughts of being labeled an informant or a snitch? And as I described that, I looked over at the jury, and their ears was attuned to the words out of my mouth, and I explained to them the seriousness of it. And then to turn around and see that I was the one that was orchestrating everybody up under the umbrella of P.O.T.S and Open Door. That includes you, Deloitte, working with Rev, working with what we've done. It puts you in a compromising position of being an informant, being a snitch, working with the police. Now, some of y'all working with me, you know what you've had to go through with other people in the streets. Yeah. So as I sit here on this conclusion, I want to thank all of you who heard these words, heard maybe the other side, and all I wanted to do out of this event was to have the truth told from our side. Because we said there's their side, our side, and the truth side. Now that you know this, maybe to take these questions back to Julian, to Terrence, and let them ask, how do you answer those questions that have been, that those of you come from book clubs, to be able to go back and tell your story, your side here from what you've heard. I wish I could be, again, all things to all people. But due to popular belief, I am not an android. For real. That may bust some of your bubbles. I'm made of flesh and blood. I'm human like everybody else. I have needs, I have wants, I have desires. And when I say I have to repent often, I say, God, I'm done. It seems like I just can't do enough for everybody. And it's almost like the prodigal son. 10 out of 10 of the sheep, 9 of them is in the corral. They're in the ark of safety, but then that one who is out, we find ourselves going out to get that one to bring them back to safety. The conversations I've had with Terrence before he got out. When I first went and met, seen this young kid at his grandma's restaurant, I was wondering if he had such venom toward me. I was wondering if he had spit in my food when it was brought out to me. That was back in the days. That's why we had to pray on our food before we digested. Yeah. No. So the thing is, to see this kid grow up, and the conversations I've had with him before he got out of prison and when he got out, I knew personally what was done for him. Out of my own pockets, out of the pockets of Open Door, all of the thing, and whatever the support that was given in him, I would like to have thought that he would have shared it with the family, with other things, other people. But I have to still feel, as I tell others who ask me that question, Rev, why did you do what you did? You kept him out of jail. Why did you do that? And I told others that what I did, I felt was the right thing to do. I felt that he would still be able to do better being on the free side of here than to be locked up for the rest of his life. I have to live me. So Jeannie, who's been on my board for decades, it has not just been me. Miss Mick's back there, see you, you're undercover. I want to personally thank all of you for being the support over the years. Johnny, we've done a lot behind the scenes that nobody even knows. But the one thing I can say, God knows. So with that, God bless each and every one of you. And as I look at, is that Jason, Jen?
Yeah,
Jason.
Jason.
Jason. I remember this guy came when he first came here, and I've seen so many people come and so many people go. And when this white guy came over the hood to try to work with the black folks, I said, boy, you just don't know what you're getting into. His hair was all black, he was all up and... So yes, it do bring back memories. And again, as I could only imagine how Moses felt in the latter years of sitting back and looking at his work, he once was young. And yet, Brother Jerry, we are still the gospel Galatians. Practicing in your mom and daddy's house right up the street. So with that, Gino, my pumpkin, my baby girl, my son, Jeff, stand up. Stand up. This is my youngest son. This is my youngest son. Remember when y'all came to the house, he was a little bit here. That pumpkin back on the right side, pumpkin, that's my oldest daughter. She has done a lot of work putting bodies back together. Behind the scenes over Pipkins and all of that, when bodies were bought and they're tore up, she is the one that put them back together. Wow. Things that have been done behind the scenes. And Mother Ruby, I seen you over there. I see you. You know. So God bless each and every one of you again as we take time. And Brother Jeff, when you had your Jerry curl.
I knew he was going to talk about them Jerry curls. I thought I was going to get out of here without the Jerry curl. Now we're talking Jerry curls.
Some of us remember these things. So again, thank you. Thank each and every one of you. Just give God an applause. God bless you.
With that being said, we want to say thank you. And also we want to say hello to Jesse Paris. He's running for mayor of the city and county of what we call a Mile High Income City. Thank you, Jesse Paris. Thank you, everybody. Again, the R Network and each and every one of you. I'm going to leave you in the words of Mama Cleo Parker Robinson, and it's very basic. The only time we look down on anybody is if we're seeking to lift them up. We only look down on someone to lift them up. And so let's just leave in that spirit, and thank you all for being here.
Mental health, man. Let's start with, us as men, and we taught that we ain't supposed to get our emotions out or be able to keep, talk stuff out. We're taught to keep everything in, or we feel like it's proper to hold stresses in and hold different things that's going on with us in. We need to talk about that stuff. We need to find friends, find loved ones, find people to let them know like what's actually going on, what we feeling. Your feelings are real, you know what I mean? It's important that we know and we're in control of those emotions and feelings, and we're able to actually talk it out with someone. So don't feel like to be a man, you gotta be tough. You gotta hold it in. It's not okay to cry. Nah, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel. That's the biggest thing.
Once we are at a place where we can actually unite and co-create, we are limitless. We are the most powerful source on the planet. And we must really tie into our innate nature and our natural ability to lead. We are the kings and queens of the planet.
Yeah, I want to say save every dollar that you can as early as you can so that you can buy a house when you get out of high school. That's going to be extremely valuable for you with equity and things like that, and open up doors of opportunity to do whatever you want instead of having to answer to anybody else. Your job is not to make sure everybody else is happy or comfortable, it's to make sure that you're okay in everything that you do and put yourself first, because then you can take care of the people that you care about the most.